Welcome into the PFF NFL Daily. Today discussing a little bit of free agency because it's offseason for most of the league. And Sam, you have an article over at pff.com that's going to be either out now or coming out soon about some, I don't know what you got for the title, but some older free agents, some guys who are younger than us, but still older than most free agents. Some of them are our age.
Right.
But one of the trickiest things, because our free agent list is over at pff.com, and one of the most difficult things for us when we're putting free agent lists together is how do you sort out the guys that are 25, 26, heading into their prime versus the older free agents who might only be on a 1 year, maybe at most a 2 year deal, and putting them in the same ranking list, but realizing, hey, look, these veterans who have been around for a while, they might be in their 30s, they could still add value. So let's break down some of them and some of the names that are going to be out there to help some needy teams.
Yeah, and it's getting more complicated because all these players, the high end, how old you can get and still play at a high level seems to be getting older and older. Tom Brady, obviously, arguably the best quarterback in the NFL still at like 44. Andrew Whitworth just became the first player in NFL history to start a game at left tackle over the age of 40. Jason Peters has been playing really well, not quite up to his, peak, but still playing at a capable starting left tackle level. He's a year behind Whitworth, 39, I think. So like the age at which guys start to decline, at which guys can still play at a really high level, just keeps going on and on. But if you're an NFL team looking to hire these guys in free agency, looking to offer up these contracts, you can't trust that yet, right? So you're still going to be looking at bringing these guys in for a short-term contract, a relatively low money type of deal, minimize the risk in case they do fall off that cliff. But I think it creates these really great opportunities for value for teams because, these guys are going to be getting short-term, probably low market type of deals, but some of them are still great players despite their advancing years.
And two of the names that you already listed here are guys that are, that were in the same boat essentially last year. Melvin Ingram, Casey Hayward, guys who did sign that 1 year contract, came in and brought a ton of value. Melvin Ingram brought value to the Pittsburgh Steelers, but wasn't exactly a fit. They traded him to the Kansas City Chiefs, and he's been fantastic up front, right? Just the same thing he's been doing all his career, winning with his hands and being a good run defender who can get after the quarterback. And then Casey Hayward was coming off a down year. Great time to take a flyer on him for 1 year, and the Las Vegas Raiders got a ton of value out of Hayward, who I don't know if he's just limited to this, old Seattle 3 scheme that he's been playing in for the majority of the last few years of his career. Maybe he's only limited there, but he's been, fantastic for the majority of his career outside of that 2020 season. Both of those guys hit the market once again next season.
Yeah, and he might be now because he's as old as he is. He's 32, which is it's not as old as everybody else on this list, but for a cornerback, that's practically geriatric. So, maybe at this point in his career, Casey Hayward is kind of scheme limited to that cover 3 type of system, but there's a lot of teams still playing that. So he still should have a marketplace given what we saw from him this year. Didn't quite maintain the incredible start to the season, but even over the entire year allowed basically 50% of the passes thrown into his coverage to be caught. Didn't give up a lot in terms of yards per catch. So even when he was giving up receptions, they didn't go for very much. And the passer rating was pretty low. So, yeah, there are teams out there that have real issues at cornerback, particularly as a number 2 spot. I think Casey Hayward has definitely earned a gig somewhere.
Defensive linemen, you always have these guys who are big names. They get into their 30s. I like to envision them just taking a lesser role. It doesn't always happen that way. And Ndamukong Suh's still playing a ton of snaps. I think he'd be better off in a lesser role. But you have guys like Von Miller, Jerry Hughes, Calais Campbell. These guys are going to be hitting free agency. Von Miller still looks good, but the risk here is not only decline, but it's also injuries. Calais Campbell battling injuries. Von has battled over the last couple of years. But those guys could still play. And I wonder, especially in the Von Miller, Jerry Hughes case, does a team just make them a 500, 600 snap guy that just rushes the passer? Are they still going to be every down players? And with Campbell, he could play all over the defensive line. So there's still value in some of these mid-30s defensive linemen.
Yeah, Hughes, I think, could become an interesting sort of situational pass rusher late in his career. He's been basically Buffalo's only pass rush for the majority of his entire career. He still leads the team in pass rush grade and in pressures with 48 this year. But he's not quite the force that he once was. But Jerry Hughes, the guy that, even at his best wasn't a great run defender. And the later he gets into his career, the more his run defense begins to become a problem. He, I think, is a perfect candidate for just scaling it all back and just saying, forget it. Don't even think about the run. We're going to bring you in third downs, obvious pass situations, get after the quarterback. Von Miller's a little bit different because his pass rush grade has declined pretty significantly. Like, he went on a run of 5 years out of 7 with a grade above 90. The last couple of seasons that he's played, it's been sort of 75. He still generates a decent amount of pressure, but it's not at the rate that it was before. But interestingly, like, his run defense has remained absolutely elite. So he's not necessarily a guy that you want to at least convert into a situational pass rusher. He's still, I think, an every down player, but you probably have to sort of factor in the fact that he's not going to lead the league in pressures, and he's not going to be like the most devastating edge rusher in the NFL anymore, just an effective guy who's still an elite run defender.
We're on to the divisional round of the NFL playoffs, and DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL, is celebrating with a huge odds boost for new customers. Counting down to Super Bowl 56, new customers can get 56-1 odds on any team. Bet just $5 and get $280 in free bets if your team wins. If Sportsbook isn't yet available in your state, you can still get in on the action of the divisional round. Everyone can play for huge cash prizes with DraftKings daily fantasy football contests, and DraftKings is giving all new customers a free shot at millions of dollars in total prizes with their first deposit. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code PFF and get 56-1 odds on any NFL team. Bet just $5 and win $280 in free bets if your team wins. It's promo code PFF. For 56-1 odds this week at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Must be 21 or older. New Jersey, Indiana, Pennsylvania only. New customers only. Minimum $5 deposit, $1 wager required. One per customer. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Just to put a bow on the Calais Campbell discussion too, he had 4 straight years of elite grades, 90-plus grades from 2016 to 19. He's still graded in the green for us, between 74 and 80. That's good. That's solid, but he's battled injuries the last couple of years. So I think that's part of like what you said with Von Miller. If you get these big name players, just kind of reset your expectations. Sometimes they taper off into good players.
Right.
And if they're on the field, a guy like Calais Campbell, who's going to be 35, can still add a ton of value, but maybe not at the elite level that he did a few years ago.
Yeah, and Calais Campbell's already kind of done the resetting expectations thing, the kind of bargain basement type of deal. Like, he obviously he was a former first round pick way back in the day, but he was recently traded. I mean, he was traded to the Ravens for a 5th round pick, right? So he's already been a guy that's dramatically exceeded really low cost to acquire him. And this could be a similar type of deal in free agency. Obviously, no draft picks involved, but if his contract is a cheap deal in free agency, he's a massive, he could potentially massively outperform that deal.
Couple offensive linemen you highlighted, Duane Brown, the tackle for the Seattle Seahawks, Ben Jones, Tennessee Titans center, and then you already mentioned Jason Peters, 40-year-old tackle. Duane Brown in particular, declining a little bit from his previous standards, much like a Calais Campbell, but we know how difficult finding starting tackles is in the NFL. I mean, Duane Brown's still better than a whole lot of starting left tackles in the NFL, even with his worst season in a lot of years.
Well, still better. And also critically, this is where, Andrew Whitworth and Jason Peters potentially make Duane Brown a little bit of money, right? Because this is like, it might be like the Casey Hayward thing. When you get to his age and you have a bad season, it's like, all right, he's done, pull the plug, we're over, on to the next guy. But as you said, 1, the level that he slipped to this year wasn't particularly bad. And 2, maybe that isn't the end. Like, maybe that was just a relative down year for him. Maybe he had a bad injury or something that he carried all season long. And if he bounces back next year, you go back to having like a pretty decent left tackle at this point in his career. So he's really interesting. And the other thing is, like, the ages of all these guys in the article, it's as of opening day, the next season. So opening day 2022. Jason Peters is 39 right now, but he will join Whitworth as the 2nd tackle in the NFL to start a game at left tackle over 40 if he plays into next season. And given what he did this year for the Bears, I think he deserves it. Like, okay, when he got beaten sometimes pretty badly, like Myles Garrett wrecked the dude on a couple of occasions, but A, Myles Garrett is like a defensive player of the year caliber guy, and B, Jason Peters outside of those few plays was pretty damn good. So I think Peters, again, like, there's a lot of teams in the NFL for whom Peters would be an upgrade at left tackle, and that ultimately is the point of these guys.
And I'm a big fan of getting a Duane Brown or a Jason Peters and also drafting. So if you are a real offensive line needy team, it's okay to draft your future tackle and hedge a little bit with a 1-year deal on, these older tackles who could still play. So go check out Sam's article. It's over at pff.com. It's off-season time, and if your team needs tackles and defensive linemen, there are some 1-year rentals available. It's the PFF.